So welcome to the first table talk of 2022, which is a particularly exciting one because we're joined by the wonderful Jonatan Garcia from Suertes del Marques. So you will have had one of his wines in the wine club case, which was this guy, the Seven Fuentes, which if you have it to hand, feel free to crack it open, and we'll discuss that and a few other bits and bobs a bit later as well. And as always, if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask. There's a chat box down the bottom if you don't feel comfortable unmuting and asking. Lovely Will, who is with me here in the office, is keeping an eye on everything, so we'll make sure that no one's questions go unanswered. Good to see you too, Stephen. And yeah, so everyone just kind of sit back and relax. We're also recording the session just because, as you guys know, we put them on YouTube so you can catch up with them at a later date, because there's a few people this evening who wanted to come and haven't been able to come, but they're going to catch up on the recording. So just so you know that you're being recorded. Perfect. All right. So I'm now going to stop talking as much because I'm not as interesting as Jonathan. So thank you so much, Jonathan, for joining us. I guess a really good place to start would just be for you to introduce yourself and talk about your project and everything that you're up to in Tenerife.
Thanks for invitation.
You're welcome.
Happy to be here.
So yeah, so if you want to sort of tell us a little bit about Suertes del Marques, how long you've been sort of working with the winery, and what made you want to sort of start making wines in Tenerife as well.
Yeah. Okay, so maybe we can start with our history from the cellar. The first vintage was in 2006. But we were growers since '86. So my father started to buy the vineyards in the '86, and during those 19 years, we were selling the grapes to other sellers in the appellation. So after 2005 vintage, my father decided to start with the project. So we started a little bit like a hobby. So honestly, we didn't know too much about making wines, or at least to make fine wines. So in the area and in La Orotava, the culture of wine is involved during centuries, but normally for making for the own consume. So during this year, during these 15 years, we learn a lot, and really we are very happy with the success and evolution of the cellar in the last year. Maybe we can also talk about the history of Tenerife making wines. Talking about because sometimes people think that maybe in Canary Island things about making wines is something new, but we have a long history behind. So we started, for example, the first vines planted in Tenerife, in Valle de la Orotava, exactly was in the end of the 15th century, was in 1497. And then during the middle half of 16 to beginning of 19 was the real motor of the economy of the island. So all the north side of the island lives for make wine, was the main business. So there were the way of working normally were growers and then the negociants, then that mainly came from Ireland, England or France, and then they established it in the valley, in Valle de la Orotava, in La Orotava town, on Puerto de la Orotava, now known as Puerto de la Cruz. So all the families, the negociant family, were based there. And there's a lot of historic episodes with wines from La Orotava. For example, the first wine drunk in Australia was a wine from La Orotava, because one negociant from La Orotava won the contract, the tender to supply the first fleet to the Royal Navy. So they won the contract. And so all the wines carried during that travel to Australia with the prisoners was wine from here. Also, Captain Cook carried the wines from here, and everything is documented in the historic archive from the island. So you can go check the dates, everything. Also, one interesting thing was happening in this exactly house that I started to live 2 years ago, and I bought, and it's from the first construction. Was from the beginning of the 18th century, and I found 1.5 years later one book with the sales of the owner of this house, how they sell to different ports and different customers, all written in English in a perfect letter. Was amazing to see that, and then go they put how they go to Charleston, to Baltimore, to Rotterdam, to Hamburg, Copenhagen. So it's great how also in this exactly house we found part of the history of wines. Then I don't know if I'm going to tell you everything, or maybe you ask me things, because if not, then I continue with the vines.
Oh, Jonathan, I mean, so fascinating so far. I mean, I'm happy for you just to talk. I've got a bunch of topics I want to cover, and if we don't end up covering them, I'll just ask, like, you'll just, yeah. It's so interesting sort of hearing about the history of Tenerife, and like how far back it stretches, and also how global the reach of those wines had been. I think a lot of people would not quite realize how far these wines have been able to travel and were sort of distributed in times when, you know, you wouldn't associate them to be. So it's pretty cool that you found it in your own home as well.
Yeah.
So with what you're doing with Suertes del Marques, I'm going to quickly share my screen with people, because there's some really interesting pictures that I'd like to share.
This is Ribera Sacra.
No, that's not you. Yeah, that's Ribera Sacra. that's my very nerdy background of my computer, guys. Yeah, I'm really cool, I promise. This is you.
Yeah.
This is not Ribera Sacra. This is Tenerife.
No, this is Tenerife.
Yeah. And this is one of the most amazing photos of a vineyard that I think I've ever seen, that we're get to see. So just to give guys a bit of context, this is where Tenerife is in relation to the rest of the Canary Islands. And we'll talk about the Canary Islands in a whole a little bit later as well, because Jonathan has an amazing new project that we're going to be sort of working with in a few weeks' time that we'll talk about, which I'm so excited about. But I'm excited about this too, as you can tell, because the amount of times I say I'm excited about vineyards, it's yeah. So this is an idea of what Jonathan's vineyards are like. So Jonathan, do you want to talk about this training method and your vines and your vineyards, and I'll sort of switch back between pictures.
So having this long history and not having phylloxera allowed us to keep all vines, very old vines. So all the vines are ungrafted. In our property, we have vines until 250 years old, and really are 250 years old. And it's amazing to see these vines. And also these vines are mainly located in Valle de la Ortava. So going outside Valle de la Ortava, you are not going to find this training system. So there's nothing written about the exactly origin of this training system. Suppose that came for the Malvasia, aromatic Malvasia, that was the most popular grape in the 16th and 17th century in Valle de la Orotava. And it's a grape that is not productive in the first batch. So it needs a longer pruning. So maybe in other places they made a Gouillot, but here they create this system. We don't know who started this. We don't think that came from Portugal, because in Portugal there is no documents talking about this. And I talk about Portugal because we have a lot of influence of the Portuguese in the end of 15th, beginning of 16th century. that established in Tenerife and La Palma Island, for example. And they bring a lot of grapes like the Malvasia, like the Negramol, or the Verdelho, or the Boal, or many more. The Torrontés. So they bring, and also in the local people. Maybe in Tenerife will be more than 100 Portuguese surnames, and we didn't know the exactly relation that we have with the Portuguese, but because came from a long 5 centuries ago. But so returning again to the training system, we think that were created by a grower from La Rotava, and then people continue copy this system because it was a productive system for the Malvasia. Later, when the Malvasia start to not be the popular grape for export or also for the local consume, they continue with this system because it was a productive system, and for other grapes, and also it's a system that you can co-planted because you can move the arms 45 degrees, and so you can have a gap between row and row of maybe 20 meters. So between in places with a limitation of a space like the islands, 1 square meter is gold. So that's why also they continue, and also in the west part of the valley that is more rocky, more basalt in the surface, and also with greater slopes. They allow to jump the non-fertile soil. So they plant in the fertile soil, and then maybe they jump walls of 3, 4, or 5 meters long with a rock that maybe in Quattroti they will dynamite, but here they jump and then they hang over that non-fertile soil. So no phylloxera. People think that not having phylloxera was something exclusive for volcanic island, but for me, in my theory, is different. For me, we have an island. We were not in touch with the commerce from the beginning of 19th century to close to the end of the 20th century. So there was like a gap of 2 centuries that we make wines for the own consume. So we didn't care about if in other regions the customer were asking about Merlot, Cabernet, or Tempranillo. So we didn't bring vegetal material for planting here. So we were not in touch with the possible disease because most of the coast or the north coast of Tenerife, for example, also in our property in La Suerte, we have a lot of clay. So the phylloxera will run without any problem.
Sorry,
one thing of this training system is, maybe I don't know if you have more pictures that you can see, that this one vine can have several arms, different, maybe 5, 6 different. The normal one is one going up, one going down. So as you are seeing here, this will be rows of one plant with a lot of with one up, one down. But also in some parts, like the first picture that you put, I count more than 6 different arms from one vine, and so in total meters, maybe 50, 55 meters of vine working from the same plant.
It's absolutely, like, it's completely such a unique training system, and yeah. I think it's so impressive to see, and you know, the resulting wines are so unique in themselves as well. I wanted to ask as well, because it's really interesting. I've just sort of you can see like where they kind of go in both sides here. So you have quite a lot of different single vineyards that you work with. I wanted to ask like how you decide how you decided to sort of work with each plot. Were they pre-existing plantings, or did you decide to do some grafting and repopulate, or how did you decide to go about your
I make 65 winemakings per year. That means that I'm going to make all my single vineyards, all my single vineyards are more than 20, and then also all the growers one by one. So that allows me to understand each soil, what I can get from each one. So maybe I can make more single vineyards wine, but finally it will be a nightmare. And also in some of them, I'm not going to see a big difference for having their own label. So the decision is first by composition of soil. Loamy clay, loamy sand is mainly because the composition over the black basalt is silt, clay and sand, and it's going to change depends of the altitude and also depends of the part of the valley. And then orientation. So the orientation is also going to modify the profile of the wine. West is a little bit warmer, east is fresher. All my style of red wines are fresh, but you can see some difference between west and east orientation due for receiving the sun. No? And then one thing that is very interesting from the Valle de la Orotava is that the west and the east is totally different. So in the west, where it's mainly planted with a Listan Blanco grape, so it's around 95% of white grapes, and is where it comes the Trenzado white wine. And then the east is mostly red, so it has more clay, more rich soil, and the Listan Negro needs a richer soil. It's not a grape that allowed too much to suffer in a poor soil. Listan Blanco is more powerful plant and it's allowed in both sides of the valley, but it's mainly planted in the poor soils in the west. So west and east is a different composition, more sand in the west, more clay in the east.
That's fascinating. I mean, your Listan Blanco is one of my favorite wines that you make. I think it's got such an amazing expression to it. And all of your wines have such unique character to them, which reflects in the grape varieties and obviously the differences in soil. So it's really wonderful to see, sort of hear your sort of take on it. Nikki's got a really lovely question.
Yes, now you are seeing the end of one arm. So this you are seeing the end. So this vine is going to go down, and it's at the average age of this area. This is a picture from La Solana, I think, and it's yes, it's the top part of La Solana is around 100 years in this part. But then consider that we are in the end of the arm.
Would you say, what's the average vine age that you have across your vineyards?
In the old appellation is 100 years old. So and then I have older, over 200 years, but mostly is 100. So when, for example, you think, I'm going to increase, for example, the production of Trenzado with new growers. I'm going to increase growers with the same quality of vines and soil. It's not like other areas. No, now you are going to the flat parts where it's more productive. So here is you have it's fantastic that you are not going to you have everything old here.
Wow.
And ungrafted.
Wow,
because
yeah,
it's important to be old to be ungrafted. I have, in my opinion, the grafted vines doesn't live like ungrafted. Ungrafted can live much longer.
Nikki's also got another great question, which is how long do the vines tend to stretch from when they're rooted into the ground? How long is each arm?
Yeah, that depends because the limitation of the length depends of different factors. Maybe you are going with a wall or with a neighbor, but the average is 5 meters. But we count in some parts 15 meters, 20 meters. So it's not an exactly length, but more or less we can say 5 meters.
Wow, they're massive.
No.
Bridget's got a great question, because I know you obviously you're working with very, very old vines, but are you doing any new plantings at all, sort of like in terms of how you're sort of preparing for the future? And if so, how often are you doing that?
Please repeat again, because
Sorry,
I was reading the question.
No, it's fine. Bridget was wondering, are you planting new vineyards?
Yes, and I'm planting in the same training system. The last wasn't the last. The last was a Listán Blanco vineyard and also one Bijariego Negro vineyard in Cordón Trenzado. But also the big one that I planted is with a local grape called Malvasia Rosada, pink Malvasia. That is a mutation of color of the aromatic Malvasia, and we plant a big part with in this training system, because for me this training system we have to protect this training system. And sometimes people ask me, do you think that this training system is better than Cordon Royal? I say maybe not, but this is something that we have to protect. This is an heritage that we have in our place, and also it's an heritage for the world, that to keep in this training system.
Yeah, it would be such a shame to do something different, especially because it works. There's no reason. I don't. Yeah. It's this idea. If it's broken, it's not. This broken,
training system works in this soil. If you plant this in this training system in a place with less rain, for example, in the south of the island, will not live. Maybe you have to put this in the north side of the island. The soil is very rich, and also we have water, rain. In the south, you will have to make a lot of irrigation for develop this training system. So it's something that is adapted for our valley, that is northern phase, that is going to impact a lot in the wines of the islands. Then wines from the north side of the island with the mountain island is very different than the south wines of the island that is warmer and drier.
Philip's got a wonderful question, which is I'm assuming you have quite low yields with your vine. I know you have sort of quite low yields anyway, but is the vine age definitely a contributing factor into having sort of lower yields but higher quality?
No, these vines produce very well. It's a system that is always making a regeneration in the arm, because sometimes you have dry wood that is covering then with a new wood that is growing from the beginning from the soil and you are braided again. So it's a system that the old vines produce the same than the young vines. So it's not the grafted vines normally suffer a lot when they start to be old. The ungrafted vines don't suffer, or at least in La Orotava are not suffering.
That's really interesting, because I think that a lot of the older vines that we have in Europe are grafted. So you can have sort of grafted vines now that are in their 60s, and they do tend to struggle. And I guess it's just you don't have that many reference points for ungrafted vines with significant age in sort of like France, for example. So it's really cool seeing how in Tenerife the ungrafted vine age is not affecting the sort of how much the wine can produce.
Yes, produce well always.
Yeah, it's amazing. Stephen's asked a question about your other projects, but I'm going to ask it a bit later because I feel like he's ruining the end. I actually wanted to also ask you about the Malvasia Rosada, because this is a wine that we have at the sourcing table. It's not on the website at the moment. We've got, I think it's 18 bottles for this vintage that we've got as a UK retail exclusive, which you guys are more than welcome to snap up. But it is a fascinating wine. I absolutely loved the previous vintage. I think it's 2020 that we have now.
2020 is fantastic. I like it. I think that each vintage improve a lot. Obviously, the vines have a 1 year older, so that's going to improve. And it's a very small production. It's 280 bottles only. So, and this is the only wine made with that grape in the world. So at this moment, at least in the dry, because then in the south they were a sweet version, but this they removed the vineyard, so they are not going to continue. So this is a unique wine in the world.
And it's very unique. Like, it's very, very delicate red. I mean, I'd still classify it. I think I'd still classify it as a red wine, but it's so delicate and beautiful and fragrant and yeah, it's so unique. Yeah. It's definitely one I'd recommend people try.
Yeah, it's a one making of red, because people have the confusion when they read rosada, think that is a pink wine, rosé wine. It's not. I make it like with whole clusters, long maceration. So I work as a red. The only thing is that it's going to be that light color due the skin is pink.
Mm. Yeah, it's really beautiful. One thing I also wanted to talk about, because you work with so many different grape varieties, do you have ones that you sort of favor in particular, that you personally really enjoy working with and enjoy drinking, that you work with?
It's for me that it's not something about that if I like more or less. Some depends of the year. I'm more happy with one grape or other one, and it's due. I'm discovering new things about that. Maybe if you will make that question 2 years ago, I will talk about Vijariego Negro, that I was very happy with the results of the wine that we were making with that grape that is called Cruzanta. But then I'm fascinated with the potential of the Listan Blanco. The Listan Blanco was a grape that normally people consider that there was in the older cellars, that was a grape without any interest. It's not very aromatic. It's something that is not spectacular in terms of aromas in the nose. But for me, it's fantastic for showing the terroir. And then that is our philosophy. And then now I have also a third white wine this year that is called Bidonia VP. VP means Viñedos Propios, and vineyards. These are two barrels that I'm very happy, and I think it's going to be to put in the map one step ahead of the Listan Blanco. So I'm very, very happy with that grape, with the Listan Blanco, because I was talking that people think that there wasn't an interesting grape. Then I have in my personal opinion, there are more than 10 different clones of Listan Blanco in the islands. But talking about the potential of Valle La Rotava, the pH is fantastic. I see the pH of other places of Canary Island and hasn't got the same parameters. So talking about the Listan Blanco from the Valle La Rotava. And this vintage, I'm very happy also again with the Listan Negro. Listan Negro is our main red grape in the islands. And I'm working in the last vintage and thinking about how to get the best potential of this grape. And in 2020, I have what we call El Ciruelo before, single vineyard, now it's called La Suertes. 20 is not in the market, but I seen that how elegant also can be that grape, working in modifying a little bit in the fermentation and the maceration in the cellar. So for me, I'm learning. I'm every year, and I'm trying to improve all the wines. So this question will be different, maybe every year.
That's wonderful, isn't it? I also Palomino, so Listan Blanco, which is also is often referred to as Palomino in Spain, is a great variety I absolutely love. And I think, you know, I've said before, your Trenzado white is one of my personal favorites that you make. I just think it's such an incredible expression of the specific clone that you guys have. Well, one of the clones that you have in Tenerife, but also shows how it is such an expressive variety. So if any of you are interested in exploring Palomino, we also have some really wonderful expressions from Jerez that are not fortified and made in various areas of the sherry region, which are incredible. And
Willy Perez and Ramiro Ibanez are doing very well in that style of wine.
So we have Bodegas Cota 45 of their wines, and we have some of the Luis Perez's wines, and also we have sherries from De La Riva, which are incredible, which are fortified, but they're not fortified, but they're oxidative. But yeah, it's just a great variety that I think has an amazing future. And it's really exciting seeing how seriously you're taking sort of growing it and sort of working with different clones. And yeah, I can't wait to try a new wine. Does anyone have any more questions at this point? I realize I'm asking a lot of questions. I have more questions, but if anyone's keen to, yeah. Nikki, you're not catching all the names, don't worry. I've also recorded this, so you can also re-watch it at a later date if you do want to, and if not, we'll pop them in the chat for you. So I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about your winemaking as well, because I figured we spend so much time in the vineyard, which is wonderful, but we have this picture of your winery, and just sort of wanted to ask about sort of how you approach, because you have lots of different sizes of cask, and I know you work with stainless steel, and is there any sort of set rules, or do you work from a different, do you work on each one differently, or do you use a similar approach to each vineyard and each variety? Oh. Sorry, Jonathan, I think I've lost you. I've gone on mute. Sorry, 1 second. It's fine, always technical difficulty, don't worry about it.
Now I'm seeing this picture, now it's much full than that picture that was maybe in the beginning. Now
oh, look how tidy it is. It's so clean.
Yeah. Now okay, so talking about the winemaking, talking about the whites, I make all exactly in the same way. So all are fermented in oak. The only difference is going to be if are fermented in a smaller volume, 500 liters, or in a big volume, from 2,000 liters to 4,500 liters. So that's the only difference. So I'm going to put it, depends of the size of the plot. I put in different size. Then newest, so all the oak, but it's made in the same way. Then in talking about the reds, most of the single vineyards are the winemaking is in the same way. So I work 100% whole bunch. The only difference is going to be if they are made in concrete or in open plastic vats. Open plastic vats is when the size of the vineyard is small. The concrete for the biggest single vineyards as La Solana, La Suertes, o Esquilón, El Ciruelo, o Candio, Chivirique, no? That are the single vineyard for the big ones. Then in Seven Fuentes, I have more than 20 different vineyards. So depends of the grower, depends of the plot, because also I have own vineyards there. I work in different way. If the grower came with a bigger yield, I know that I can't extract too much. I can have a longer maceration. I can work with a whole bunch, because if not, I'm going to extract a lot of greenness. So I work with this stem with trying to finish the fermentation a little bit faster for keeping the fruit. Then if the grower came more balanced, the grape has better parameters, better pH, better ripeness, I work with a different percentage of whole bunch, working with a little bit longer maceration. So depends of the vineyard. I work in different way, but mostly it's similar winemaking, all with indigenous yeast. That for me is part of the terroir, the yeast. So people ask me if I select yeast or if I use, I don't know how is the word in English. So when you make the fit, I don't know how is the word when you use the yeast from one for other one.
Inoculating.
Pie de Cuba. I don't know how it's in.
Yeah,
So I'm not doing that, because for me it's also the personality of each vineyard. Then I make around 20 different vineyards of whites, and still are fermenting 4. So we are in the end of January and still are fermenting. So I don't care, because it's something about my way of working. So I the only thing that I can do is make a little bit of batonnage to try to activate the fermentation, but I don't use any product for fermentation.
You have to trust that it will be done when it's done.
Yeah. The only thing is to take care for not having full the barrels, for not having acidic, because when are fermented strong, doesn't care if are not full. But then in this status has to be full for not increase the volatile acid.
Do you use any specific temperature control at all during the fermentation?
No, in the whites nothing. And in the reds, nothing in the plastic vat, and in the concrete, I only activate for not going up than 30 degrees. But normally in concrete, the stability of temperature is very good. That's why I use concrete instead of steel. That normally in the steel tanks, the temperature is going to be up fast, and you have to activate the frozen team. Because normally you can have 35, 36 degrees, and after that you have a lot of extraction, and you can lose the wine.
I also, because you mentioned Seven Fuentes earlier, I thought you should maybe touch that a little bit more, because you said, I think I got myself a bit confused. You have 20 vineyards that you work with for this. I thought I was 7.
20, 25 depends of the yes. Now I'm not counting how many going into.
Okay, so the original concept was 7, and then it just grew.
No, it's not because one of the mistakes is that people think that there are 7 vineyards. There are not 7 vineyards. It's a story of 7 places for drinking wine in the valley. So it's a village wine. So, and it's vineyards that has a different procedence from different parts, altitudes of the Orotava town.
Yeah, it's a really wonderful wine. I mean, I'm really enjoying the 2019 vintage. Probably think more than the 18 actually. There's always actually like a thing I think would be really nice to talk about at this point as well, is because in all of your wines you have a really wonderful sort of like matchstick reduction, and I think it's something that people don't really understand where that comes from, and it is something you get a lot in sort of more volcanic soils as well. And I was wondering if you would be happy to kind of explain sort of like where that note comes from in your wines, because it's something that definitely appears in all the wines that you make.
Now in the I'm going to talk 2 things. First, 19 for me is less reductive vintage than other ones. And it's due after 18. Also in 18, I start to make a rack in the middle only for the concrete tanks, because Siete Fuentes has a percentage around 60% of concrete, the rest of barrels. So the part of concrete around February, I rack and I put in other concrete clean, and I sulfur again, because I see that sometimes some part of the reduction reactive notes came from not being the wine too clean, and start to develop that aromas. And also in sometimes also if we normally happen in the last bottlings of Siete Fuentes. Siete Fuentes is exactly same blend from if I bottle 10 times, are 10 times with the same percentage of each vineyard. But I noticed that in 16 and 17, the last ones that don't reach UK, for example, but develop a little bit of animal notes. That also is like some animal notes in the nose and the mouth that I don't like. So after in 18, I start to do that, and I'm seeing that the wine is much cleaner also in the nose than before. Then after that, the reductive notes are coming from the soil. This is something that we have in the valley. Something about the soils, soils with a low pH. Volcanic, and it's part of the identity of the soil. So after all of that is coming from winemaking, because sometimes the reductive notes came one side, one part of winemaking, one part of the soils. Now talking about the soil, the volcanic soils normally give that reductive notes. But then in the whites, for example, you will feel that in Trenzado you feel more reductive, more notes than in Bidonia, because Trenzado is coming from the poor soil and Bidonia is coming from the rich soils. So and then you feel a difference in the same valley. So for me, it's also the balance of the soils that when are more unbalanced will have a more possibility of reductive.
Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating. And Stephen's asking a great question, which is, do you think that specific varietals are also more prone to reduction? And he uses the example of Mencia from Ribera Sacra, my favorite.
Yes, I work. I made one wine for one guy that is in Valle de Guimar, that is the South Valley. So you have in the north side is the Valle de la Orotava. In the opposite is Valle de Guimar, and I make one Listan Blanco. The wine is called Las Toscas. I think I think has Michael Sager is important there, and I made that wine exactly in the same way, and you don't feel the reductive notes that you feel in Trenzado, and it's because it's a place with more warm, more sun, more warm, and you receive a little bit more fruity notes in that wine. Then I made also this year Listan Negro in Gran Canaria, also from one vineyard with more sun, warmer, and I don't feel any reductive notes there. So I think it's coming more in the grapes that I have from the vineyard and from the grape.
It's fascinating.
The ones that I could compare.
Yeah, that's really wonderful. Thank you so much for explaining that as well, because it's such an sort of an integral part of the wines and your wines and how they express themselves. It's really interesting understanding exactly where that comes from. And also you talked about the Canary Islands, so I'm now going to segue into your new project, which is incredibly exciting. And I've been wanting to talk to you about it for ages. So this is Tameran, for you guys who will not have seen this yet, or if you have seen it, well, good for you, because I've only just started to see it. So this is Jonathan's new project based in the Canary Islands, which is you and David Silva, is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's very popular in UK, him.
He is very popular here, yeah.
More popular than me.
I told my partner about this this project, and he works in the wine trade, and he was really excited about David Silva, and I was like, "But it's Jonathan from Suertes. That's way more exciting." But we got to taste these wines before they came over to the UK, and I personally just fell in love with them. I think they're amazing. We only have the whites. I'm not sure if you have. I don't know if are you making any reds at all? Or?
Yes, I made a clarete, it's called Vidueño, but it was a very short production, 260 bottles. This year we have again, and then I'm making a red, but the vineyard that we had a grower, and for the moment I don't like for me and maybe we will sell to other seller the red, because when you don't have the control of the vineyards, and this is not because Tameran all are 100% are own vineyards, and then this vineyard, the Tameran vineyards, is the 10% of the production of the island of Gran Canaria. So it's a big vineyard, but it's a small vineyard. It's a big vineyard because if you compare with the rest of the island, so it's not easy to find growers there. But then we have to consider that the Gran Canaria island has half of the vineyard of Valle de la Orotava only. So Valle de la Orotava is the double or more than the double of all the whole island of Gran Canaria in terms of vineyards, of hectares.
So saying you have a large vineyard in Gran Canaria basically means you have a small vineyard.
Yes, we are very lucky because we follow the same philosophy of Suertes, so that is very important to have our own vineyards. So So the 100% of Tameran is our own vineyards.
And I just wanted you to sort of talk about the project and sort of how you guys came to do that, because basically we're going to have, I think it's 5 different single variety wines from Gran Canaria that Jonathan's made, and they are all beautiful and very different and distinctive from each other, and it's absolutely fascinating, and they're just delicious, but they are, I think they're a bit different. I mean, because you have so much more focus on red from the Suertes side of things. It's really interesting seeing you focus on these white grapes, and I'm just quite curious as to how you and David decided to do this, and where it all came from and how it came about.
This really started when he was playing in Manchester City. He sent me a private message through Twitter, and I think this is a fake account or something, because he was drinking El Ciruelo 16, and he said, "Congratulations, this is fantastic. I'm very proud that the wines from Canary Island are doing in this way." And then we start to have a friendship. And after 1 year, he said, "Why do we don't make something in Tenerife?" And I said, "Maybe in Tenerife, I know most of the island. Maybe I don't have I not have the motivation for making a new thing, because also I'm making. I have a small project in Taganana that is called Sortevera, and finally one night he sent me one link with a property that we're selling, and I said, "This is fantastic. This is amazing. I am going to put in touch." And when they sent me the dossier of the project, of the vineyard, of the property, I saw that also the grapes planted are indigenous grapes that are great grapes, great local grapes. And finally, I negotiate the property, and we start to work. And the first vintage, that the 20 that you have, I made in a friend cellar that they gave a space. So, but obviously all with our barrels, food that we bought. And then the second vintage is made in our own cellar. That is, we finished the construction before the new harvest. Yeah, and the grapes are the 5 wines are Verdelho, are Marmajuelo, are Volcanic Malvasia, are Vijariego Blanco, and the other one is which one? Verdelho.
Verdelho. Is it Baboso?
Baboso Blanco.
Baboso Blanco, yeah.
Baboso Blanco. The white Baboso, that is it's not easy to find. It's maybe will be 3 wines in the whole Canary Islands made with that grapes.
Yeah, the Baboso Blanco, I think, my personal favorites are the Malvasia Volcanica and the Baboso Blanco. I think those I love them all, but those are the 2 that really stuck out for me. I think the Baboso Blanco is exceptional. It's
now it's in a good moment. When we bought all at the beginning, the one that shows much better, I remember that was the Vijariego Blanco. Now I see that the Baboso Blanco now is also is a grape that is one of with the biggest potential in with the studies of the Canarian grapes. And but for the moment we have only 600 bottles, and we are planting more. Also in the same property we are continue planting, because for me part of the future of Gran Canaria is to continue planting new vineyards there, because it's an island that has the same potential of Tenerife, no? So we have to we are each year we are planting new blocks, because here is not a philosophy of single vineyards like Suertes del Marques, because I don't consider that I don't see different big difference of elevation, of a type of soil, of orientation, and so I made by blocks like the New World by single grapes.
Yeah, and it's honest. I think it's one of the most interesting, if you have a chance to buy all the wines and taste them together, it's one of the most interesting tastings I think I've done of white wines, because they're all such unique grape varieties that you really don't come across very often at all, and from such a unique place that you wouldn't really think to drink from that regularly. And it was just, I mean, I love the wines from Tenerife and Canary Islands anyway, but it's not something I would be able to drink very regularly, and it was just such an incredible experience tasting those wines. So I'm very excited about being able to offer them to you guys in the next few weeks. And yeah, also, if you have a chance to look at the vineyard and the winery, it's an amazing place. It looks incredible. Have to try and get out and see you guys at some point.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any more questions? I realize we've kind of been on for about nearly an hour now. And yeah, I've actually, Steve, you asked a really great question a bit earlier that we didn't discuss, but you said about asking about the revolution into making dry wines from traditional sweet wines, and do you think that is something that sweet wine's more dominant in terms of production in the past in Tenerife, and it moved into to dry?
The style, the old style of Canary Island was to make the fortified style with a sweet or dry. So the reason was that the wine is not going to be oxidated fast, so they can live years, and also they can travel for the long travels to America, Asia, later to Oceania. So that was why the style of fortified developed in Canary Island. But then when in the 20th century the style of fortified wine doesn't continue, no? So all start to be in the dry style.
Yeah, it's a bit like Madeira in that sense, you know.
Yeah. Now I start to make in 2017 one sweet fortified wine with also I bought all Madeira barrels from Enriquez, and I'm very happy with the result. I think I sold some bottles to Indigo. I don't know if they continue having, or
I think they're probably all sold now. If not, I'll see if I can try one. That sounds really exciting. Philippe asks, are you feeling effects of changing climate, or is the proximity to the sea helping to moderate climate change?
Yes, yes, because what I'm seeing that the harvest period is I'm doing earlier each vintage, except the last year, but I was very worried because in 2020 I started to harvest the third week of July. But also happened in the whole hemisphere north that finally all the harvests were finished at the end of September. Also happened in Burgundy and everywhere. But I'm seeing a little bit of less rains and a little bit average temperature a little bit higher. But this winter, I'm feeling a little bit colder. That I'm happy to do that, because I'm seeing that the vines are going to wake up a little bit later than happened in the previous year. So I think that in this moment, I think that I'm going to return to normal harvest season that will start around the end of August, more or less.
Wonderful. Does anyone have any other questions at all? Hopefully that means we've covered everything. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us, but especially thank you, Jonatan. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your evening to talk to us. It was absolutely fascinating. Got us even more excited about the new vintages that are arriving, and yeah, it's just a wonderful time to be drinking wines from the Canary Islands and Tenerife. So thank you, and thank you, everyone.